The United States Congress has got a lot of work to do in 1 week. And that's because it's the last week of the legislative year, and a new Congress arrives on January 3rd. There are two big things facing the Congress right now. They got to close out the year. They've got to fund the government via a short-term CR, and I hope that short-term CR includes the AM Radio in Every Vehicle Act. There are lots of stuff that people want to get done, but this one has got massive consensus across the aisle, and it should be attached to the CR. More importantly, the Republicans have to agree on a strategy for January. What are they going to do on the budget and reconciliation process? And when I say this, some people's eyes glaze over. Budgets, reconciliation, why are we talking about that? Because it's going to impact your life, whatever the Republicans decide to do. Now, the problem for President-elect Trump is that he has too much talent messaging. He got a lot of very effective messengers, and they all go on cable, and they all message differently, and they say different things to different people, and depending on who you heard, you will think, oh, the president-elect's major priority is A, his major priority is B, his major priority is C. In fact, nobody really knows what his major priority is. We know what his big campaign promises were. Immediately secure the border. That means finishing the border wall, expanding the Border Patrol, providing all sorts of resources to Immigration Customs Enforcement. He has promised a massive military rebuild because our stocks are down, our ship count is low, our men and women in uniform need a pay raise. He has promised regulatory reform for energy and housing. He wants an economic boom. And crucially, he's promised to extend the tax cuts that marked the first Trump economic boom. And the big debate inside the United States Congress is whether or not, when the Republicans get control of both the gavel in the House and the gavel in the Senate, they move one or two reconciliation bills. Yesterday, and I'll replay the interview in the first hour, John Thune was my guest, and he made the argument for maybe going with two reconciliation bills. I'll ask Steve Scalise what he thinks. He played his cards pretty close to his chest yesterday on Larry Kudlow's show. I was a guest on Larry's show with Byron York at the end of the program. We sit and we watch the program, and then we get a couple of minutes to comment on it. And Larry, of course, having been the economic advisor to Donald Trump in the first term, wanted to come back around to talk about the question of what to put on the floor and when to put it. One reconciliation bill, and what does it have in it? Or two reconciliation bills, and what goes first? Here's what Larry Byron and I talked about at the end of yesterday's Larry Kudlow program on Fox Business.
Now, a great political panel. Hugh Hewitt, the famous Hugh Hewitt, host of the Hugh Hewitt Show, and not to be outdone, Byron York, Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor, both fabulous. Hugh, I'm with you, buddy. We never disagree, but I get the tax cuts in the first tranche of reconciliation, for heaven's sakes. There may not be a second tranche.
Preach, Larry, preach.
Yes, sir.
We have one viewer right here, the president-elect. If he calls up the speaker, if he calls up the incoming Majority Leader John Thune and says, whatever's in that first reconciliation, make sure the tax cuts are in there, because the economy is forward-looking, small business is forward-looking, big business CapEx is forward-looking. We need certainty, Larry, to get the second Trump boom going. So preach.
Yes, and you know, Byron, look, he ran on it. I mean, the working class coalition of all stripes and colors, I mean, how many times have we all talked about this? The economy was number one. It's about take-home pay. It was about higher prices. The tax cuts, including, you know, the tax-free cash tips, for example, or tax-free overtime. This was, you know, the heart and soul of Mr. Trump. He said it every time, every place. I'm for getting the border closed. Of course I am. And any defense help and any energy help. But put it all together. There may not be a second bill.
Yeah, you're right. And among members of the transition, the top things to do have always been to, one, fix the border, to two, to make the tax cuts permanent, and three, and get the deregulation machine going again, because the president realizes that he was elected because of the economy and to fix the border. Those are the things he was elected to do first. And I agree with you. I mean, on Capitol Hill you never know if you're going to get another chance. And if you have one chance to do something, you ought to take it.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh, it's like Russian roulette, and the stakes here are very high. If they have this first bill without tax cuts, you don't know that there'll be a second bill, as we've said. And you know what? You might wind up sitting there sucking your thumb at the end of December, and you had the biggest tax hike in history under a Republican administration. All the hope will be gone. That's too risky, Hugh Hewitt.
It is too risky. There are two things, Larry. Number one, the president-elect is at the maximum of his power right now. So if he wants to bring people into line to vote for reconciliation, it's right now. Number two, the economy's got to be booming. If you're a Republican like you and I are, I'm not sure about Byron, but you and I are Republicans. If we want the Republicans to win in 2026, the boom has to begin soon, which means the tax cuts have to be in there soon in order to work their magic for the elections in 2026. So if they strike out on the first go, they're not going to make it on the second go. Get it done now.
And Byron, one other point, quickly. Mr. Trump will be using tariffs quickly, and he is right to do so, in my opinion. Unfair trading practices. But you want to cushion the tariffs with tax cuts first.
Yeah, the theme of this transition is preparedness, to be ready. This is the second time Trump has done this, and they're getting ready, doing things fast.
So the key here is for the president-elect to make his position, not his advisor's position, but his position known to Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Scalise, Leader McConnell, incoming Leader Thune, and say to them, I don't care if you do one or two. I hope you do two reconciliations because you can get a lot done if you do two. But whatever is in the first reconciliation, as much of the tax cuts that I put into place in 2017 that can be agreed upon, and 70-80% of what's in the tax code can be agreed upon very quickly by the Republicans. There are deep disagreements on things like the state and local tax deduction, on things like appreciation deductions. But there's no disagreement at all on, for example, small business pass-throughs. Everybody knows they got to do that. There might be some disagreements on how much people ought to be allowed to save in a Roth IRA or over how many years ought people to be obliged to withdraw their savings, all that different stuff. Not crucial in the first reconciliation. And I explained this morning in my Fox News column. Head over to Fox News or just Google Fox News and Hugh Hewitt. The column is entitled Morning Glory, the risk Republicans run by delaying tax legislation. Right? We run a big risk if we delay. The big risk is that a small majority falls apart. It's a 220 to 215 seat Congress. 3 members of Congress are leaving to take jobs in the administration on January 21st. That doesn't mean that they can't vote on the budget. They can vote on the budget. The new Congress arrives on January 3. The new president arrives on January 21st. What the new Congress can do is pass a budget resolution. If they negotiate it now, they can put that down and they get to work on the trailing bills, and they can do all of that with a 220-member majority. Then you go down to 217. Now, some of those will be back more quickly than others. The New York officials are going to drag their feet on replacing Elise Stefanik. But Florida, for example, is going to replace Michael Waltz very quickly. Ron DeSantis wants to be of help, not delay. So they'll get 1 or 2 of those seats back very quickly. But nevertheless, narrow majorities collapse quickly. Why? Because people don't like each other. Because you bump into someone in the hall. Because you don't vote for someone's bill. Because you run into their car in the parking lot. There are a lot of reasons that Republican majorities fall apart. It's why you want to work with 20 and oppose a 5. But they've got 5, and they have Thor's hammer called Donald Trump. And he can call up anyone who does not want to vote for the first budget resolution and say, that's fine, vote against it. I'm going to go recruit a primary opponent against you. And you know what? That will work. That will work very effectively in year 1. It may work in the summertime. I don't know. Anything can happen. I remind people of Jim Jeffords, Jumpin' Jim Jeffords. The ghost of Jim Jeffords is summoned up like the ghost of Christmas Past at the end of my new Fox News column. Because some of you won't know Jim Jeffords. He's been dead for a decade. Jim Jeffords was a Republican senator when George W. Bush was elected in 2000. And Jim Jeffords got mad. He got so mad that he changed parties. And when he changed parties, the majority switched to the Democrats. It was a Republican narrow majority. They needed the vice president to pass something 50-50 in 2001. I think it was in May of 2001. Jim Jeffords jumped. He jumped from the R column to the D column, and the majority was gone. I don't know if any House Republicans are going to defect. I don't know if any House Republicans are going to die. I don't know if any House Republicans are going to say, no, I don't feel good about this. I don't know. All I know is that Donald Trump should get on the phone with the Speaker and the leader in the Senate, Mr. Johnson, Mr. McConnell, and say, I want the budget package ready, and I want the following things in the CR at the end of the year, including the AM radio in every vehicle act. I'll tell you more about that after the break. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.